STO Teck Trek. I'm Astro Zombie. Over here is Aponte, and then we have a very special guest, Chuck. Welcome, Chuck.
Hey, thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Anyways, so we're gonna move on quickly with the Endorian ships.
Yeah, so this is the new T6 bundle that we've gotten here. Fed-wise, it's the Endorian ships that we've gotten. For the Klingons, it's the Lethians, and for Rom, it's the Daewons. So I guess, you know, kind of what Endorian is to Fed, those races are to the KDF and to the Romulan. So all three of these ships are actual pilot ships that actually have the double tap maneuvers, which is really nice. So yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of what they did with the Endorian ones, actually, because I've always been a fan of that ship design ever since I first saw it in Enterprise. And I think with these T6 pilot ships, they did a really good job of keeping true to that design and how it looks, while also kind of giving it a modern touch. So I'm a fan of what they've done with those. Yeah, the Daewon, like you said, though, I mean, that legitimately looks like something I'd see in a fish tank.
But one of them looked like one of the ships out of Futurama. What's it called?
Oh, the Planet Express ship?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I could see that in the Daewon. Yeah. You know, there's a little more fin to it, but yeah, I could definitely see that. I mean, that one doesn't look horrible. I think that one takes a little while to get used to. The Lethian one, I think, is maybe the strangest one I've seen in Star Trek Online. I get this weird, almost Imperial Star Wars vibe from it too, in a weird way.
I mean, did you watch Babylon 5 at all?
No, I've never seen Babylon, actually.
Yeah, if you saw Babylon 5, you'd probably get the reference a little bit more.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out. But yeah, I mean, still, actually, it's not ugly. It's just, it's different, you know. Which is not bad to have all these different kind of styles. It does look like it actually is going to be kind of fun as a pilot ship because it does have that built to it. The Daewon one, you know, I don't know, might be my least favorite, but I still think it's all right. It's definitely a big change from, because the old pilot ships, the original bundle that we got for all the classes, I really did like the KDF and the Romulan variants, like their skin types and their design. I wasn't a huge fan of the Fed one. I thought they were okay, but kind of bland and basic. And here, I think the Klingons one, it's kind of growing on me, actually. I kind of like that design. The Endorian ships I love. But I think the Romulans, in just my opinion, here got the short end of the stick on that one. But
Yeah, they look like a bunch of angry tadpoles, you know?
Yeah, right? I mean, that's what I mean. I definitely see fish here, like hardcore. But so these ships have made it for most races. This is the 7th variation of pilot ships. So there were the original 3 that each race had a variant of: tactical, science, and engineering. Then there is the Miradorn, which is, I believe, lockbox, and can be gapped by any race. And now we have all these 3. And now the Klingons, though, I believe, are the only race to have a leg up because they have the D4X. And I believe that's actually a double-tap pilot ship, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so, you know, interesting that the Klingons actually have a leg up here. Usually that's very rare. Usually they're the ones who are kind of left behind. But you know, so we have a good amount of variation of the different kind of pilot ships that are out there now, so that's nice.
Now, I know, Aponte, that you put out a video earlier today and stuff like that, last night, to be honest. So, I mean, what's your feel on it? I mean, you did a beam build, or? Yeah,
so, I mean, I talked over all 3, like layout and console and trait-wise and whatnot, but I only used the tactical variant. And what I did a high-end beam build and a, you know, decent torp kind of layout. This character is not really set up to that high-end, but just something to throw it on there because I was interested by the console. And, you know, obviously, as you'd expect from a pilot ship, maneuverability, A+, they're fun, they turn on a dime. Again, though, as you kind of expect, squishy, but, you know, from this kind of ship, you're not going to expect more than that.
Right now, I just got the ship pack today, and I'm leveling the tactical one right now. I've leveled up the engineering and the science one. The BOF layouts are they're okay. You know, I'm still trying to get used to how squishy they are because, you know, as we like to go in and fly and blow everything up as fast as we can, they've got a lot of punch to them, but they just don't hold together very well right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I noticed too, is that the minute, I mean, I went in with a high-end beam boat that's really obviously geared toward DPS, not much survivability, and I tried a couple pug runs, and they did not go well. I had to bring in an actual player who was going to take some aggro for me. So, yeah, this is definitely something you're going to have to put a little balance on if you plan on pugging it with it, so heads up.
Yeah, I've been practicing double tapping the back button. as soon as I think I'm going to blow up, I double tap backwards, and hopefully I can get out of range of whatever's shooting at me. But I've been running a cannon build on all the variants of the ships, and it's pretty nice. You just have to remember, you know, that you have an arc. If you took like a straightforward beam build, you know, your arc is, you're moving, you know, you're broadsiding it. Your arc is nice. With cannons, it's not going to be so generous with you. So, for example, I was in a KSA. We blew up the introductory tactical cube, and then you go towards whatever side you want to go. And I like to do DPS as opposed to, you know, going and trying to destroy the probes. So I get over, you know, the first time I was flying one of these ships, and I get over to the left, and, you know, I'm pewing away, and the sphere, his little, you know, he ran out of my cannon arc, and so I'm you know, banging away at the cube blows up, the 4 transformers blow up, and all that's left is me and the generator, because I think that I've blown up the sphere already. And lo and behold, you know, I'm getting hit by something, and I'm thinking, well, I'm at an angle to where the gateway cannot hit me, so it must be the sphere somewhere. So you have to watch out for when you're running cannons. My curiosity is to take an all turret build in there and see how that would span out.
Yeah, definitely. That would be something I would do in the future. Just take an old turret build in and just, you know, go around and just smash spacebar and get it done that way. But yeah,
I would be interested to see, because I remember that I've done it a few times back in the day. I remember a lot of times I actually have seen an all turret kind of build. They're fun, and they were really viable before because of stuff like the plasma consoles. Still, again. So, I mean, even though the turrets are not going to put out as much DPS, you'd still see some really good numbers. Now there's not so much of that, with feedback pulse and the plasma explosions doing a good amount of your damage. So I'd be really interested to see an all-turret build now, and what kind of level it can get pushed to. So that's actually a good one.
Yeah, I think you'd probably want to do it out of funsies, though. You know?
Yeah, always, yeah. You know, and another thing that you're saying toward the arc, obviously, so one of the other builds I tried on it was a toward boat, which is obviously very similar in that forward arc thing. And I think sometimes what happens with really maneuverable and fast ships, and especially with the pilot ships and the maneuvering, you kind of start to wonder, is this a forward arc build I could put on and still get like a pedal to the metal thing going? You know, and I've seen that a few times, to be honest, where people have done that. And I'm not going to say it's not possible, because it is, but that requires quite a lot of skill, I would think. And to be honest, probably lesser engines. And what I mean by that is something that's not Mark 14 epic, because, you know, if you are actually trying to do a legitimate full impulse pedal to the metal style thing with a forward-facing build, and you think, okay, I could just come in, and the minute I get too close and I'm going to get out of arc, I just double tap back and let it go. But obviously that double tap has to regenerate there, and if you have Mark 14, very, you know, epic engines, depending on which ones they are, chances are any of them are honestly going to be a little too fast for something like that. But I've actually seen people try to do that more often than you'd think.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely think a dual beam bank scenario would probably work pretty well with these ships.
yeah, I mean, I think they're really versatile. You know what? I think forward facing, you know, especially with a ship like this where it's easy to get back. I mean, the thing is, a lot of times with forward facing kind of builds, cannons and torps and things like that, people get really kind of focused on the more maneuverable ships, which is not something you necessarily need. But I will say that obviously when you're first learning these builds and positioning, they leave less or more room for error, meaning you could actually, you know, get back into position a lot faster and a lot easier, so that everything's not lost. So if you are running cannons or torpedoes, dual beams, and you're kind of just learning them now, these probably are the ships that you want to be in. You know what I mean? Because it's a lot easier to get back in position if you mess up than it is with something bigger. Alright, so all three of these variants are pretty similar with the actual layout. So they are all 5.2. Engineering-wise, for the tactical, it's 3, and then science 3, and then tactical 5. For the science one, all the same, except now we are going 2 for engineering and 4 consoles in the science slot. And for engineering, obviously, just switching that up, it's 4 engineering and 2 in the science. All of them do have 5 tactical console spots, so they are still very tactical heavy.
Is there an experimental weapon that comes with that ship?
Yes, okay, this is actually interesting. So there's an experimental weapon slot, which is nice. The weapon it comes with is called Alliance Hypercannon. Alright? There's some interesting parts about this weapon, and then there's some parts I'm not sure about. So, right now, I'm on the ground, so don't actually take this number, but what it does is to target 2,600 radiation damage. Now see, physical, kinetic, those things, they're really nice. If you've ever messed around with weapons that kind of have a secondary, a secondary radiation proc or anything like that, like a lot of the torps and some beams do, you might have noticed radiation kind of doesn't do much anymore. If I'm not mistaken, I believe it's because the way radiation damage is actually like calculated has kind of been lowered, so it's not giving you, you know, the kind of punch it used to. So the fact that this does radiation damage, I'm not too sure how potent this weapon's actually going to be. But one of the interesting things it does do is it has 3 different procs on it, and they're a 10% chance. So it's a 10% chance to give -10 all damage resistance rating, which is the disruptor proc. Then the plasma proc of 10% chance to do plasma damage, and then it also has the phaser proc. So obviously the Alliance Hypercannon, it has all 3 of the Alliance weaponry procs there. So that's kind of interesting. I just, you know, I should have probably used it in those runs, but I didn't even think to actually see what this radiation damage is. I mean, Chuck, did you use it yet?
No, I've been using the railgun.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, this is not anything I'm going to have to play around with and see, because there are a few of these now that actually are good. And even if you don't have a lot of ships, like we've talked about before, the Tears of the Prophet from the Bajoran Interceptor, which obviously, you know, hopefully everybody got. That's a really nice one. So I'm not sure if this is one you'd keep in there and want to upgrade or switch out to, so we'll have to do some testing.
Well, yeah, I was watching the Wednesday blog thing that Ambassador Kale does, and Borderkiss and everybody else were on there and stuff. They were sitting there saying that it was basically like a scenario, like, you know, the members of the Federation got together and they were trying to decide what they were going to do with this, and they couldn't decide, so it ended up having like a phaser proc, a disruptor proc, a plasma proc, etc., yeah. like a joke type thing. Like they couldn't decide, so it just kind of got everything.
Yeah, well, I mean, the procs are interesting. Actually, I kind of like that. You know, it just depends if the radiation damage will compare to some of the other weapons that do kinetic or physical. Just to quickly go over here for the tactical variant here, it has a Lieutenant Commander Universal, a Lieutenant Universal, a Commander Pilot Tactical, a Lieutenant Commander Tactical, and an Ensign Engineering. So obviously it's got some versatility there. Nice heavy on the tactical. I do kind of wish that it was the Lieutenant Commander that was pilot, not the Commander Tactical, but it's still not bad. For the science here, it's a lieutenant commander universal still, and then another lieutenant universal. Then it still has the commander pilot tactical, and then we get an ensign engineering and a lieutenant commander science. So pretty much the same thing. The only swap out here was the second lieutenant commander tactical is now science. And I'm, going to imagine here, obviously the engineering would be the same thing, where now that lieutenant commander is engineering and everything is the same. So not bad seating. I definitely think that the tactical one is by far the best to work with in terms of like a beam or a torp boat or anything like that.
After achieving level 5 in your Andorian Kuthar Pilot Escort Tier 6, you will unlock the Painful Memory Starship trait. While slotted, foes affected by your engineering bridge officer abilities will also be slowed down and suffer from an ongoing electrical damage over time effect for 10 seconds.
Alright, so the thing about this trait that that kind of strikes me as a little weird is that it says target of your engineering bridge officer ability. Now, there's not many engineering bridge officer abilities that target foe, I'm trying to think here. I think, we have like structural integrity collapse that actually targets a foe. Endothermic inhibitor beam.
Maybe it's just being affected by when you activate a bridge officer ability.
So that's what I'm saying. That's the interesting part about if it works directly as it reads, or if it works differently, because there are a few. There are other, there's a couple other than the two I named. I can't really. A lot of them are ones you don't really use a lot, like boarding parties, obviously, which please dear God don't use. I recommend eject warp plasma, but that actually says to self too anyway. So, there's only a handful that actually will target enemy. So, that trait I'm not sure about. I think that's something we kind of need to test and see what actually does trigger it, but. Either way, I don't see it being anything really special there. So, but it would be interesting to see how exactly it does work. So off of the science variant, we have improved gravity well. Duration of gravity well increased by 20 seconds. Recharge time of gravity well reduced by 20 seconds. Primary target of gravity well suffers -20 all damage. Resistance rating for 40 seconds. Now this trait, it's just, wow. So, first off, the first two parts are pretty much telling you there. That reads to me as constant uptime on gravity well. Which obviously changes a lot of these maps completely, The big thing here is, is the damage increase or anything like that? No, but the fact that your gravity well will be out far more, sure. But, in terms of something like ISA and HSE, the ability to crowd control the map is a big part of what helps out DPS. You know what I mean? Essentially, this trait now makes it so that an exotic side player, if he's going for DPS himself, or any kind of support guys who might be running it, the whole map now, we can control where the enemy is. You can literally go in there at the start of ISA and throw a gravity well on the gateway after you take out that first spawn. Go to the left side, do all your killing. All those spheres that come out are just getting caught there. Head over to the right side. If the gravity well's up, put it back on. The entire time, the map is controlled. So that's really nice. Obviously, the -20 damage, all damage, something like that's always nice. The name of the game with DPS, I always say, is, it's negative damage debuff and Cat 2 bonuses. So anytime you're doing that, it's nice. So I think this trait's really interesting.
Yeah, I can't see it staying like that or working like that for very long. I just think it's another Honor Dead trait. It's going to get pulled back a little bit in a week. I've not seen it work. I don't own the ship, so
yeah. So should it be changed? I'm not sure yet because I actually haven't worked with it. In theory, like I said, though, just imagining. So the big thing here is it going to make gravity well do what plasma explosion and stuff used to do? Absolutely not. In terms of damage, no. But it will change a lot of... It will increase DPS throughout the run, though, on certain players' behalf, though, because, again, the map being controlled is a big one. If you've ever gone into runs and stuff and you don't necessarily have somebody with a good gravity well, you know, you could have the best run ever, and all of a sudden you kill the tactical cube and you think the run's over, but there's a sphere that got away on one side. You know what I mean? I mean, this literally controls it. Those guys are there the whole time, and a lot of the abilities, you know, if you're running a torpo and now you're going to throw a salvo of biomoleculars on the gateway, it's a big damage increase because there's a lot of abilities that hit targets within a range, and now, especially for like an exotic side build, for someone like Protius or when we run them, you know, you put those abilities that hit multiple targets on the gateway with all those spheres gravity weld there. It's a big increase, you know what I mean? Really helps in Hive Space Elite at the start when you want to get rid of all those freaking cubes so that you can now only worry about the tac cubes and start moving, all those spheres. It's a big difference, you know? The only map I don't really see this as a big one is something like Crystal, in terms of DPS, because usually in a DPS kind of run, you know, one gravity well is plenty anyway. But, so that's the only thing here. I can see it being changed, but it's going to be interesting to see the effects because it's not like Gravity Well itself is going to be doing crazy numbers or anything like that, but how the map works is definitely going to change drastically now.
Alright, so Promise of Ferocity. It's a plus weapon damage / TAC pilot bridge officer ability. While the starship trait is slotted, activating tactical or pilot bridge officer abilities will provide a bonus damage buff as long as you remain in combat. Once every few seconds, this buff will stack up to 5 times, but all stacks are lost immediately upon leaving combat.
So this one's really nice, I think, actually. Essentially, it's Cat 2, bonus weapon damage, 4% that stacks up to 5 times, so we're looking at 20% of a bonus, once every 4 seconds upon hitting these abilities. So, you know, essentially, it's a little weird in terms of the amount of time it takes to stack up, just in terms of I'm looking at it in a normal, you know, in a normal activation cycle. You know, to start off ISA, I'm going to go in and hit Tactical Team and things like that. So the first time I hit Tactical Team, right there's my first stack. And then all my other abilities that go off. So then essentially 4 seconds later, I can get another stack, but most of my tactical abilities at that point are going to be on, you know, a 15-second cooldown, something like that. So if you then have a Pilot Bridge Officer ability, then you can keep going. Either way, you're looking at getting a 20% Cat 2 bonus at probably the best part of ISA or something like that, or for HSE, just when you get it, you have it to the end. Because in most of these runs, you don't really leave combat. If you're piloting correctly and staying in the fray, the minute you go into Red Alert, you're in Red Alert to the end of the map. So that's really nice. Essentially, you'll have it in ISA for the gateway, the tactical cube, and the spheres. You'll have all 20 stacks, which is definitely the time you want it. I can see this being changed in terms of the 4 seconds. I can see them lengthening that, which I actually don't think affects the actual, you know, bonus damage, to be honest, unless you have a few pilot abilities and you really are paying attention at first to make sure one tac ability and pilot ability is getting hit every 4 seconds at first. But for most people, I really won't see that affecting it if they move it up to 10 seconds or something like that. But, you know, just again, another nice damage bonus for the duration, so it's lasting a good amount of time. I think it's a nice trait, you know. Alright, so obviously this trait does say all weapon damage, and we have tested to make sure, obviously, that includes projectiles. We obviously thought it would. But we have had a few cases in the past, or at least one, where it said all weapon damage, but it was only exclusive to beams. So this is boosting projectile or energy type, energy weapons. So, you know, for both builds, it works out nicely. So quickly, we'll just go over the consoles. First, the engineering variant came with a console I was excited to try out. It's the Wing Torpedo platform. Now, the passive bonuses are 2.5% crit chance with projectile weapons and plus 20% critical severity with projectile weapons. So right there, really nice passives, honestly, for a torpedo boat. Launches a pair of level 61 wing torpedo platforms that follow your ship for 60 seconds. Each wing torpedo platform will periodically fire a torpedo at your current target, dealing high kinetic damage. 2-minute recharge. When activating any rank of torpedo spread, apply torpedo spread 1 to wing platform. When activating any rank of torpedo high yield, apply torpedo high yield 1 to wing torpedo platform. So that's really interesting. That, you know, it's kind of like its own little version of like concentrate firepower or torpedo barrage, where you activate any rank of these abilities and automatically this console will fire out a rank 1 of that. What I've noticed, the DPS is somewhat decent secondary DPS in terms of it's equal to, you know, the point defense bombardment warhead or the secondary torpedo launcher, which would be the 3-piece for the Terran set. Those are all, you know, consoles and 3-piece sets that you somewhat would find on torpedo boats. So with spread, it does do some nice damage. Now with high yield, though, I didn't see near the numbers. You know, probably I'd say about 1/3 the damage it was doing with spread. So if you're running a spread boat, something that's using like neutronic and gravimetric, quantum phase, it's all spreads, it actually will give you some good secondary damage. So, and obviously just torpedo boat wise, it's got good passives, so it is worth it. Again, these consoles are not universal. They're only for the T6 pilot ships. They can go on any variant, obviously, but they are not for other ships. This ship isn't a bad torpedo, though. It doesn't have command. It's not going to win me over any other kind of ship for it, but it's a good little ship for it, so it works.
Alright, so our next console is the neurophasic disruption field. This console provides a passive boost to flight speed and resistance and slowing effects. Basically, it's plus 8% flight speed, 100% resistance rating to speed and turn rate debuffs. Neurophasic disruption field is it's a clicky? Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's an activatable.
Okay. Neurophasic disruption field. Once per second for 10 seconds, affecting up to 10 foes within 5 kilometers of the targeted foe. 481 electrical damage. That might scale depending on your... I mean, dude, that should scale on your EPG,
particle
right?
gens. Yeah, it does. And obviously that number is taken off of the ground, so it's higher. We're just kind of giving you the idea of what it does.
Exactly, and it confuses for 1 second, plus 20% chance are disabled for 1 second. So that's not too bad. Skills that affect part gen. Yeah. So nothing.
Yeah. So this console's similar to isometric charge. In terms that, it's doing electrical damage and is boosted by EPG. Isometric is actually a really nice console in some certain situations in like ISA, and really nice in Crystal if you're running a high EPG kind of boat. The only thing is, though, that's usually on a heavy exotic kind of build, something with a secondary deflector, things like that. So since this console can only be equipped on these pilot ships, if you are running maybe like a beam exotic hybrid, which is possible on the science variant, and the seating does allow for it, it wouldn't be that bad. But overall, unless you have a good amount of EPG, I don't think it's going to be something that you're going to see great results out of.
For the science variant of the Universal Console, it's called the Gateway Trap Spawner. It gives a native 5.3 Starship control experience, as well as plus 50 Starship scientific readiness, which will help reduce your bridge officer cooldowns. The Gateway Trap will cause an AoE damage plus slow plus pull, teleport subsystems offline in a 135-degree targeting arc. The Gateway Trap itself, within 2 kilometers of foe for 10 seconds, will cause the following to all enemies within 5 kilometers. A constant pull towards the Gateway Trap, 2,540 kinetic damage each second, minus 86.8% flight speed, minus 87.4% turn speed. Also, to foes pulled within 0.2 kilometers of the Gateway Trap, it will actually teleport the enemy exit to the gateway, and all subsystems will be offline for 6.6 seconds.
I just want to say, So again, for anybody listening to the numbers, they obviously all depend on different skills you have. Also, some of them have been read on the ground. So don't take the numbers we've been saying as anything exact. It's always going to change between your skills. If you're in space, things like that. We're just trying to give you an idea of what they do.
So I think that this gateway trap clicky would be kind of useful in a DPS run for an ISA. I mean, let's say you clear the left side, you go in front of the gateway, you clear the right side, and let's say you have all those nice spheres left in front of the gateway. Why not go ahead and pop, a gravity well along with this gateway trap and see how much damage that can do?
Yeah, I mean, I think that could work out. I think another thing, depending on how powerful the pull of your gravity well is it would actually be interested to see. So the one thing at the end there with the teleport to exit. So, it is something I think that has to be, you have to kind of do this carefully. There are some maps and some circumstances where that teleport could end up hurting you. If somebody puts it on the spheres that are coming out of the gateway, right when they first start coming out on either the left or the right side, and it's one of those runs where maybe you don't have as much DPS as other times, so it does take a little longer. You got to remember that exit gateway is the one actually closest to you, so it could end up pulling those spheres to where you don't want them.
Right.
Again, though, like you said, in a run where you do have some powered DPS and things like that, if you have a strong enough gateway, even the ones that do get teleported, which if there's a gravity well with it, are probably a few of them, they'd probably get pulled right back in. But, again, chances are that with the damage from the gravity well, the damage this console does in just period DPS, it might not even get to the point where they teleport. So it would be interesting.
Yeah, I've been playing too much with the torpedo console to try and test out the science one, so I haven't yet to try it myself.
Yeah, I've used it, not a whole lot yet, because I haven't had the time to really mess around with any of them in a whole lot of depth, but I did take it out on a run when I was using the kind of beam kind of build on the tactical one. And to be honest, I didn't even get to use it in the run because there's a lot of time. So obviously, as you talked about, it's a 135-degree targeting arc. And it also seemed that there were some instances, depending on how far or how close, obviously I'd expect the within 10 kilometers, but there really seemed to be a certain sweet spot there between like 4 to 7 or 8 kilometers away, obviously within that targeting arc, that the only time it was lit up to click. So anytime I was thinking about, looking down to try to use it or something, it wasn't actually available. So it's something I'm going to have to play around with a little more and, just try to figure out what the sweet spot is for it there. I did use it in some things like red alerts and other things like that when just leveling up, and it was fun,
Yeah, it's too bad you can't use it on any other type of ship, though,
Yeah, and again, the console we talked about before, Astro talked the Neuro Phase, that one could actually be another interesting kind of version of the isometric if you were able to run it on a science ship with a lot of EPG and a sec def and things like that. The electrical damage there could be something that could be equal to an isometric charge. So, it would be interesting if these were totally universal, but... So obviously all three of these are universal in terms that they can go in any console spot on any one of these variants. So they are a 3-piece set as of right now. The 2-piece bonus is predictive maneuvering, which is a +10 flight speed and +10 accuracy rating. Nothing I think too crazy there.
Yeah, and the 3 set is called Streamline Circuitry, which reduces the recharge on all Alliance pilot escort console abilities by 1 minute. The wing torpedo platforms will now use rank 2 of both high yield torpedo and torpedo spread instead of 1.
Another thing I kind of want to bring up about this, and so usually when the anniversary ship comes out, 2 years ago it was the Krenum science ship. Last year it was the Lucari Hokan science vessel, I think, if I'm correct. Now, those consoles that came on those ships, the Protomatter and the Timeline Stabilizer, were mixed with a 4-piece set of the next set of C-Store ships that came out. The original ones for the timeline stabilizer were the flagship bundles, the T6 Odysseys and Scimitars. Last year, it mixed in with the T6 Vesta variants for the Fed and the the same variants for the ROM and KDF. So I was actually expecting Domino to make a 4-piece set with these. Now, I haven't heard this directly from devs or anything like that, but I have heard from some people that they have been told that it will be changed so that it is a 4-piece set with Domino. Again, that is not 100% fact. It's what I've heard. We will see. I would think it would, just because that is how it worked the last couple of years. And then I would just imagine, if I'm going to speculate there, because it's how the other 4 work, the 4-piece set would then be a reduction to the time it takes, because all of them, the 3-piece or 4-piece, are usually switched out, and obviously this one has the enhancement to abilities, so I would imagine the 4th piece would be the reduction to the time. So obviously each one is a 2-minute recharge. This would take it down by about 50%. So I would keep an eye out for that. That could happen. So I would never tell anybody to just directly go out and spend money in the game. That's up to you guys. I will say that right now, if these are ships that interest you, if you like the designs or the style, a big fan of the pilot ships themselves, we do have a bonus Zen right now and also a ship sale. So if you were thinking about these ships and they were something you wanted to do, I would say now probably is the best time, because you will get the best deal on them. I think they're a nice set of ships. I think 2 out of the 3 traits are really nice. I think a couple of the consoles are interesting, and then the ships themselves, they have a really nice balanced kind of layout for you to do with what you want. Pretty good for DPS, any kind of variant there. And obviously, the pilot maneuvers, I always think, the pilot ships in this game are always some of the most fun to fly. So, I love them.
All right, but, realistically, are any of these going to be meta-breaking?
I think this new trait off the tactical one, I'm not going to say, there are very few times I think some things must have, like the Domino console, things like that. If there's anybody out there who didn't get the Domino console, shame on you. I think this new trait is really good. I think it's something you could definitely see on DPS builds, because again, it's just, as it is right now, it's 20% Cat 2 for the duration of combat, so that's really nice. I think the Gravity Well one is not necessarily something you're going to see on high-end like beam boats or anything like that, because how often do you get like a nice Gravity Well 3? But I do think that does change a lot in terms of exotic side builds, and also just like how people are supported. Not even nanny run, but just full team runs where somebody might be the crowd control side guy and a tank, things like that. I think that really has a chance to change some things. Other than that, I don't think anything on here is necessarily groundbreaking, anything like that. The consoles are nice, nothing special. So, I don't think it's something you have to rush out there for, but I do think that tactical trait is probably the nicest piece for just pure DPS.
Yeah, I agree with Aponte about the science trait. I think that exotic particle builds are going to benefit from that greatly, having a gravity well that lasts, an additional 20 seconds.
I mean, yeah, and the reduction. I mean, so if you're going to think about it realistically, it's constant uptime on gravity well between the 20-second duration to the actual gravity well, and then the 20-second reduction to the time to put down another. So
could also shorten that duration with some duty officers, right?
So yeah, again though, gravity wells actual cooldown. So if you just threw a gravity well on your ship without any kind of reduction, gravity well goes on a 60-second cooldown. So now Gravity Well is on a 40-second cooldown and also lasts for 40 seconds. So, without even anything else, scientific readiness or any abilities, it's already at its global cooldown because it cannot go less than 40 already. So this trait itself, by itself, makes Gravity Well always up for you.
Yeah, okay.
One thing though, again though, just to kind of, So again, we talked about, you know, are these worth it, things like that. As they are right now, absolutely. Again, though, sometimes, and you know, for whatever reason, whether they think things are too powerful, I can understand that, but you have to make sure sometimes things are up for change, you know. Same thing kind of would happen with Honored Dead, and don't get me wrong, Honored, what they did was right. Honored Dead was, you know, a little too crazy the way it was originally, but Honored Dead was out of a lockbox and fairly cheap on the exchange. This is a, you know, something you're actually going to have to spend your Zen on here, so, would you maybe want to wait to see if it gets changed?
Okay, well, that's not fair, because it's on the ship on the Klingon side, so...
Okay, true. So you're right. It is on a ship over there. So if you went and got that ship for that, you're kind of in the same boat. All I'm trying to say is, you know, these could be subject to change if they are found to be a little too overpowered. Which, to be fair, I kind of get that outlook. But on the other token, some people may look at it like, I spent the money because I saw a trait I liked and I liked the way it worked, and then all of a sudden you changed it. So you know, not taking sides on any of that argument. I think both have valid points. Just, you know, maybe you just want to wait to see if anything gets changed there, which is always a possibility. That's the only thing, you know. All right, so just a little heads up for next week. We've actually had a few different times recently where people have been asking about ground builds and, you know, what's the new meta for ground and on those certain maps. Ground's actually something that a lot of us actually kind of haven't dived into too hard yet in this new season, since we've all been kind of back playing together. So next week, we're actually going to be going into ground over, you know, a little bit of the tactical builds, the engineering, the psi. So this week, you know, we'll be doing a lot playing with that, seeing what's changed, you know, what's remained the same, and kind of see what's new with the meta. So, you know, for anybody who's interested, stay tuned and check us out next week. And thanks for listening, guys.